Buckle up, folks. It's time to break down the Buffalo Bills Week 1 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Well, folks, welcome in. Very excited to break down the Bills' first game of the season. And if you've been listening to this podcast over the years, you know exactly what's about to happen. If you're new this year, welcome. And I'm excited for you to see how we prepare for an upcoming Bills game. So let's get into it. The Buffalo Bills, they're on the road in Week 1 to face the New York Jets. The game will be played on Monday, September 11th at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The game will be played or broadcasted on ESPN. Joe Buck is on the play-by-play. Troy Aikman is the game analyst. Lisa Salters is the sideline reporter. Including the postseason, this will be the 126th all-time meeting between the Bills and Jets. And the Bills hold a 68-57 all-time record against the Jets. Now, the Bills have won 5 of the last 6 against the Jets. They've had some very good recent success, but the Jets did collect their first win against the Bills last year since 2019. And, of course, when you talk about even recent history between the Bills and Jets, I'm not sure how much any of that matters given the addition of Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, who completely changes the dynamics of that football team. The head coach of the New York Jets is Robert Saleh, 44 years old. He's entering his 3rd season as the Jets head coach. His first year was 2021. They were 4-13. And then in 2022, his second season, they improved to 7-10. But his mark across 2 seasons is 11-23. Prior to becoming the Jets head coach, he was the 49ers defensive coordinator from 2017 through 2020. And when it comes to head-to-head matchups against the Bills and Sean McDermott has won 3 out of 4 matchups to this point against the New York Jets, coached by Robert Saleh. Quarterback of the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers, 39 years old. He turns 40 in December, 6'2", 225 pounds, was the number 24 overall pick in 2005 out of Cal by the Green Bay Packers. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, a future first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greats at the position. Now, obviously, this is his first season with the Jets after 18 years in Green Bay, where he was a 4-time NFL MVP, including 2020 and 2021. The Packers had a great record with him, 147, 75-1 as the starting quarterback. They won the Super Bowl in 2010 over the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's had a ton of success. Now, in previewing the Bills' opposing quarterback, I normally run through a bunch of data and splits, but this is obviously a unique situation with this being Aaron Rodgers' first game as the Jets quarterback. And of course, it's week 1 of the season. But I don't want to get into stats and splits. I do want to get into some of the dynamics that I think are important as we forecast Aaron Rodgers to the New York Jets. Now, like I mentioned, he turns 40 in December, and he's coming off his worst season. That's not a hot take. That's just the truth. I know that there's going to be some Jets fans that listen to this episode and are going to be very eager to push back on anything negative that I say about the Jets. I'm fully aware of that. But he's coming off objectively his worst season, and things got bumpy at the end there in Green Bay. The drama over the last couple of off seasons, was he going to retire? Was he going to force a trade, right? It was a weird situation. And when you look at his production his last season, you're going to see just all-time bad marks relative to Aaron Rodgers. In 2022, his passer rating was 91.1. His career passer rating is 103.6. He threw 12 interceptions last year. He had 9 interceptions the previous 2 seasons combined. He averaged 217 passing yards per game. His career average is 256.8. I mean, the Packers were 8-9 in 2022 after 3 consecutive 13-3 seasons. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this. It wasn't that Aaron Rodgers just suddenly forgot how to play football at a high level. The weapons were not good. They lost Davante Adams, and Aaron Rodgers is literally throwing the ball to a bunch of rookies and Allen Lazard. It wasn't a great situation. The offensive line was banged up all season long, and that offensive line had some holes to begin with. Now, we know Aaron Rodgers. He's a lot better than the quarterback that we watched last year. But you do have a player that is coming off his worst season that turns 40 in December. And we know Aaron Rodgers is a big trust guy. He has to trust what is around him, whether that's blocking or pass catchers. We all saw the viral clip of Mecole Hardman yelling at the other Jets receivers and saying, he's not going to throw you the ball if he doesn't trust you. Well, I think that's a big problem last year when he's throwing the ball to a bunch of rookies with protection that he doesn't trust. It didn't foster a great environment for Aaron Rodgers to play his best football. Meanwhile, I thought the Packers did a poor job of playing to their strengths offensively in 2022. They had this running back duo of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. That's one of the best in the league. And they didn't lean on that quite enough and put the ball in Aaron Rodgers' hands. And he didn't trust the protection. He didn't trust his weapons. Now, Aaron Rodgers certainly wasn't playing his best football, but I would also say that he didn't run the offense as it was intended to run just due to that trust dynamic. So is it decline from Aaron Rodgers, or was it just a product of what was around him? We'll find that out, but I think he's going to be a good starter for the Jets, an excellent starter perhaps. Now, one thing that has been a bit of a trend for Aaron Rodgers over the last 2 seasons has been some week 1 stinkers. I mean, just bad performances. In 2021, remind you, this is an MVP season for Aaron Rodgers. Packers lost 38-3 to the Saints. Week 1, Aaron Rodgers was 15 of 28 for 133 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 36.8. Last year, week 1, a 23-8 loss to the Vikings where Aaron Rodgers was 22 of 34 for 195 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception, passer rating of 67.6. Now, he's had plenty of amazing week 1 performances, but the last 2 years have not been good. Now, what really, I think, helps Aaron Rodgers with this transition to the Jets is that he has a familiar offensive coordinator, which we are going to discuss next. We're going to get into the offensive coordinator, the weapons, the offensive line, and what I think the Bills need to do defensively to have success against the Jets offense. But first, did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of thinning with Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism through whole body health. So take the first step to visibly thicker and healthier hair, and for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. The offensive coordinator for the New York Jets is Nathaniel Hackett, 43 years old. It's his first season as the Jets offensive coordinator. Last year, he was the head coach of the Denver Broncos, and that was a complete disaster in every imaginable way. I've watched a lot of NFL football throughout my life. I've never seen a team as poorly coached as that Broncos team. Just procedural issues, couldn't get play calls in. It was a total mess. He's fired after 15 games, and it was a complete joke. Some guys just aren't cut out to be head coaches. Some guys are just better coordinators. And I think that's the case with Nathaniel Hackett because he's been a very successful NFL offensive coordinator with Aaron Rodgers. And so before he was Denver's head coach, he was the Packers offensive coordinator from 2019 through 2021, and they had a lot of success. The Packers in his first season in 2019 were 15th in scoring offense. Then in 2020, they were the number one scoring offense, which was, of course, an MVP season for Aaron Rodgers. And then in 2021, they were 10th in scoring offense. He also coordinated a top 5 scoring offense with the Jaguars in 2017. And you probably remember Nathaniel Hackett as the Bills offensive coordinator in 2013 and 2014? Yeah, 2013 and 2014. He was the Bills offensive coordinator. That was a bumpy road. E.J. Manuel, right? Doug Marrone. But he's certainly found his footing and has had some success, particularly with Aaron Rodgers. Conceptually, Nathaniel Hackett runs a timing-based West Coast-style passing game. The ball comes out pretty quick, timing-based routes. Aaron Rodgers, good, accurate quarterback. He's got some route runners. It's a good system fit. And then from a run scheme perspective, it's going to be blended, but he's leaned into more wide zone concepts even last year in Denver, Nathaniel Hackett. So I think you're going to see zone rushing. You're going to see West Coast timing throws through the passing game. Now let's look at the weapons that Aaron Rodgers has at his disposal. We'll start with the wide receivers, and their best offensive weapon, I think by far, is Garrett Wilson. Second-year player, was the offensive rookie of the year last year, 1,100 receiving yards. And he did that as a rookie with Joe Flacco, Mike White, and Zach Wilson throwing him the football. I mean, Garrett Wilson is going to be a superstar if he's not already. Very, very talented route runner, really good body control, really good hands and concentration, has yards after catch ability, can play inside and outside, just a legit do-everything guy. Now, he's not the biggest receiver, but I think that's fine. He's certainly a very shifty guy that knows how to get open and catch the football. He's going to be their guy for a while and a player that is going to have some success, right? He's a good football player, and he's the biggest challenge, I think, offensively in terms of a weapon that is presented to the Bills. So get used to Garrett Wilson matching up against the Bills. Their other receivers, I think there's a major drop-off. Obviously, Garrett Wilson sets the bar pretty high, but after him, it's Allen Lazard. Allen Lazard, a familiar weapon for Aaron Rodgers. They spent some time together in Green Bay. He had some injury issues, but this is kind of like a Gabe Davis type player. Big-bodied, size, ball skills, wins down the field. Not super twitchy or a big-time separator, but he can absolutely go up, high point, and win in contested situations. So big-bodied, physical receiver in Allen Lazard. And then the depth there, I think, is really Mecole Hardman and Randall Cobb. We'll see with Mecole Hardman. He's always a player that I think is more exciting than he actually delivers in terms of consistency. I mean, he was with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City and never really amounted into any level of consistency as a receiver there. I don't think it's suddenly going to happen for him with the Jets. But he offers a lot of speed, and I'm sure there's some creative elements that they can tap into with him. And then, of course, Randall Cobb, who's always around Aaron Rodgers. I mean, certainly not the Randall Cobb of 8-10 years ago, but a veteran receiver that certainly has caught a lot of footballs from Aaron Rodgers. But Garrett Wilson, really the focus of that wide receiver group. Their tight end tandem is a good one. Tyler Conklin, the starter, CJ Uzoma, the backup. They paid some pretty good money to bring these guys in last year. And Conklin coming from the Vikings, Uzoma coming from the Bengals. I think it's a really good tandem. Conklin's the more dynamic player, has some legit athleticism. Uzoma's got a lot of size to him. It's a really good tight end duo. And then at running back, I presume it's going to be Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall as the primary ball carriers. Breece Hall was off to a sensational start to his rookie season. Then he had a ACL tear, 7 weeks in or something like that. Now he's back and healthy. We'll see how things go, if there's going to be a pitch count or how they want to ramp him up. It seems like there's some messaging that indicates that. But obviously, if he's healthy, he provides a lot of speed and big playability out of the backfield. And of course, they signed Dalvin Cook after a great stretch with the Minnesota Vikings, a veteran running back. I think his last season in Minnesota was underwhelming. If you watched him play, I know that everybody thinks about the long touchdown run against the Bills. He wasn't touched. I think pretty much any running back in the world would have scored a touchdown on that play. But his rush yards over expectation, his EPA per rush was very, very poor. And if you watch the tape, I thought he was very ordinary, has a long history of shoulder issues. I know he's kind of coming back off of a shoulder. Hasn't really been with this offense much throughout the offseason. So I think that there's a lot more hype to that signing than I'm willing to give it credit for. I don't think it moves the needle to me. I think Dalvin Cook is kind of an ordinary player at this stage in his career. But I think in a role now with the Jets where he's not having to be the guy. Like in Minnesota, he was one of those high-volume lead ball carriers. With the Jets having Breece Hall to go with him, a nice young back as well, and Izzy Abanikanda, Michael Carter, they've got some depth there. I don't think that he's going to have to be a 20-touch-a-game guy. I think they can probably get a lot out of him in tandem with Breece Hall. So a potent backfield for the New York Jets, but some questions with Breece Hall in his first game back from injury, what type of volume he can command. And of course, Dalvin Cook's first game with this Jets offense after a really strange offseason for him. When it comes to the offensive line, I think there's some real questions here. Their left tackle, Duane Brown, is an aging player. He's been on the PUP list for a lot of this offseason. Has had a great career, but you just kind of wonder, has he kind of come close to that expiration date? We'll see. Their left guard, Laken Tomlinson, free agent signing last year. They gave him some pretty big money to come over from the 49ers. I think he struggled a little bit early on, settled in, and became a solid player for them at left guard. Connor McGovern is back at center. He's been their center for a number of years. They drafted Joe Tippmann, who's probably going to succeed him at some point, but he's holding on to that job. I think he's an average starting caliber center in the NFL. Their right guard is a bright young player in Elijah Vera Tucker, who is coming off of an injury. He missed every game after week 7. Looks like a nice young stud, but it's his first game back from injury. And then the right tackle, Mekhi Becton, who they picked in the first round a few years ago, but he's had some challenges, really hasn't been available over the last 2 years. It has been a disappointment. He's getting a chance now to kind of re-energize his career and see what he can do. And obviously, if he can wind up being a hit for them, that would be big. But I think there's a lot of questions as it relates to Mekhi Becton. He's a big, monstrous dude. I mean, one of the biggest offensive linemen in the league, a ton of athleticism, ton of power, but he hasn't been a consistent player when he was on the field, and then he really kind of hasn't played over the last 2 seasons. So a big question mark at tackle for the Jets. So what are my keys for the Bills' defense against this Jets offense? Number 1, I have written down Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson. I mean, we watched Aaron Rodgers in that 1 or 2 preseason series that he had, and it felt like he was just throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson like crazy. That's their best playmaker on offense. He's a route runner. He's a guy that I think just fits. We talked about Nathaniel Hackett, West Coast style timing offense, good, accurate quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. These guys are going to be a really dangerous passing duo. Really dangerous. They're going to throw him the football. He's going to have, I bet you he has over 10 targets. And so the key here is obviously, you know, that I'm a little underwhelmed by the rest of their weapons. And so I think from a Bills key perspective is you try to make other guys beat you in the passing game. Don't be afraid to give a little extra attention to Garrett Wilson and say, you know what, if you're going to dice us up through the air, it's going to be because of Randall Cobb and Mecole Hardman and Alan Lazard. And you live with that. But don't let Garrett Wilson go off on you in this first game. He's going to make plays. He's a great player. But how do you limit that the best that you possibly can? Number 2, I think you got to have a win when it comes to the edges of the line. Your defensive ends against their offensive tackles. Duane Brown, Mekhi Becton. Question marks with both of those dudes. You got Leonard Floyd. You got Gregory Rousseau. Got AJ Epinesa, Shaq Lawson. These guys have to win that matchup consistently. No, you don't have Von Miller, but you still got a couple of more than a couple of first-round picks. You have talent off the edge. Gregory Rousseau and Leonard Floyd need to have some big-time wins against those players. Number 3, I have mix up the looks. This is a new offense. I know that Hackett and Rodgers have time together, certainly Lazard and Cobb, but everything's got to work together for an offense to take off. New situation, their first game together. You want to mix up your looks and make them continually adjust. The benefit of having continuity offensively is you've seen all the problems that you're going to face, and you have an inventory that you can reference to get yourself out of issues. Well, put them in a position where they have to continually adjust because they're not sure exactly how you're going to play them because you're giving them a ton of looks. And then number 4 is tackle. Tackle, right? That's a key principle of defense, but especially against this team. In 2021, Hackett, Rodgers, Green Bay, MVP season together. Rodgers enjoyed 5.9 yards after catch per completion, 4th most in the NFL. The year before in 2021, he got 6 yards after catch per completion, number 1 in the NFL. It's a timing-based offense that gets the ball out of Rodgers' hands into the hands of playmakers and asks them to create. You gotta make tackles. And that has not been a strength of the Bills in the past. I'm sure they're looking at Tre'Davious White, who's not historically been a great tackler, and they'd love to put Garrett Wilson in situations where Trey White has to tackle. The Bills' success on defense will largely be rooted in their ability to consistently tackle. All right, coming up here in just a moment, we're going to talk about the Bills' offense against the Jets' defense, a defense that frustrated them like crazy last year. But first, I need to tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America and is easily the most exciting way to play DFS. The format, it's awesome. It's just you versus the numbers. It's not you versus thousands of other players, including pros, including sharks. All you do is you select 2 or more players, you pick more or less on their projected stats, and you place your entry. That's it. It doesn't take long. Picks can be made in just a minute or so, and it's so much fun. And the withdrawals, they come super quick. So check it out. I love to make sure that when I'm going to watch a football game, I have a PrizePicks entry locked in, and it just makes watching football that much more fun. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. The defensive coordinator for the Jets is Jeff Ulbrich, 46 years old. It's his 3rd season with the Jets. Prior to that, he was the Falcons linebackers coach from 2015 to 2020. Runs a base 4-3 defense, zone coverage. That's, not a lot of exotic stuff, but they do it well. Really, really good unit last year that improved drastically. Their first season, Saleh and Ulbrich with the Jets in 2021, dead last in scoring, dead last in total defense. It was literally the worst defense in the history of the New York Jets. Fast forward one season in 2022, and they're top 5 in scoring defense, they're top 5 in total yards, and boy, did they give the Bills a lot of trouble. Let me give you some numbers of the Bills against the Jets last year on average in 2 games, and then the other 14 games that they played. So in 2 games against the Jets in 2022, the Bills averaged 18.5 points per game. And the other 14 games, 29.9. So 18.5 points to 30 points per game. Passing yards against the Jets, 157 yards. The other 14 games, 273. Rushing yards against the Jets, 118. The other 14 games, they averaged 143 rushing yards per game. Total yards, 275 against the Jets. Against everyone else, 415. Third down conversion percentage against the Jets, 38%. Against the other 14 teams they played, 53.2%. This defense frustrated the Bills. Now, I think part of what makes them so successful as a defense, and we're going to get into this more, but is their ability to pressure the quarterback without ever having to blitz. In 2022, they had the lowest blitz rate in the entire NFL, but the third highest pressure rate. That's huge. When you can drop 7 in coverage, there's just not a lot of space to slot throws. 7 in coverage, you're only putting 4 or 5 guys into routes at most. You got 7 covering them. Meanwhile, you're actually getting pressure with 4. It's a tough deal. When you can get pressure on quarterbacks without having to blitz, it is hard. And the Jets do a great job of that. Let's talk about their personnel and then my keys. Their defensive line, their edge rushers, Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, the starters, good players. I don't think either one of them is an elite player, but they're above average starters. John Franklin Myers, a powerful player, plays the run, compression style rusher. Carl Lawson, another balanced player. And then they got good depth. Michael Clemens, a draft pick from last year who was a later pick, winds up being really good, better than the first round pick that they had, Jermaine Johnson. So if you're looking for a Christian Benford, Kyer Elam dynamic, the Jets might have that in Michael Clemens and Jermaine Johnson. And then Will McDonald, they invested another pick, a top 20 pick this past year, their rookie first round pick in Will McDonald. So they're real serious about this edge rush. A good group, a deep group, a lot of talent, a lot of versatility, good size, some dense frames in there. And then you got Will McDonald, who's got some leanness to him, some burst and some bend. So I like the makeup of their edge rushers. Defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams. I mean, one of the best 2 or 3 defensive tackles in the game. Rushes the passer. I think he had like 12.5 sacks last year. So obviously a big, big challenge for Connor McGovern, Mitch Morse, and Osiris Torrance there in his first start. Other defensive tackles, Al Woods. That's the big-bodied nose tackle type. Came over from Seattle. Nice player. Quentin Jefferson. You guys know him. He used to play for the Bills for 1 season. A better pass rusher than he is run defender, but he's also a guy that when he was in Buffalo had to play a lot of one technique, and that's not really what suits him well. So Quentin Jefferson, I think, is a nice complementary player to what the Jets have. And then Solomon Thomas, who's guy that really profiles maybe more body type wise as a defensive end, but he's a high energy player that has athleticism that they reduce and play inside as an inside player. At linebacker, C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams. C.J. Mosley, veteran, got off to a rough start there with the Jets, but over the last couple of years, he's settled in and kind of refound his form, particularly last year. It's a good defense for linebackers. And, you think about Fred Warner and Drake Greenlaw with the Jets or with the 49ers under Saleh. C.J. Mosley's kind of really coming along nicely. Quincy Williams, an extremely athletic player, matchup type guy, right? That's their Matt Milano type player. He's a good one. At corner, they got that Sauce Gardner guy that has certainly very quickly become one of the best corners in the entire NFL. I think you're going to hear a lot about, while he's very grabby, he is very grabby, but he's also very good in coverage. So I think both things can be true. You can sit there and try to diminish him all you want and say he's physical and grabby and gets away with a lot, which is true, but dude's also a really good cornerback that stays in phase, stays leverage, and is tough to complete passes on. I mean, nobody really had much success against him last year. They have a really good CB2 in DJ Reed, who's a bit more of a veteran. He's certainly been quite vocal about how good he thinks the Jets defense can be this year, comparing them to like the 85 Bears. We'll see. But he's a really solid CB2. And then their slot player is Michael Carter, who I think is a really solid slot player. So just quality players there at corner. And then a nice safety tandem. Jordan Whitehead, I think, is the best player they have at safety. Really good tackling safety. That's one of my things that I really appreciate about him. Flies around and is physical and tackles. And then Tony Adams. Tony Adams was not the scheduled starter. They had an injury, and then they signed Adrian Amos, but Tony Adams winds up being the starter. I guess he's their worst starter on defense, but it's a really good group all in all. So what are my keys for the Bills on offense against this Jets defense? Number one, stay patient on offense. Stay patient. And I think that's part of why the first 2 things that I'm going to say here, let me kind of just blend this together, because I think this, when I ask myself, why did the Jets have so much success against the Bills last year on defense? It's my first two keys. Number one, stay patient on offense. Number two is use the slot. The Jets are a team that really don't want to give you big plays. They want to take away explosive plays. And of course, the Bills last year, as we know, really wanted to create explosive plays. And so by doing that, you're kind of leaning into what they want you to do. And I think against the Jets, the Bills' absence of a true threat in the slot hurt them the most. Right? That route running, quick separation, middle of the field, not having that guy hurt them the most against the Jets. And so my first two keys, stay patient on offense. Be willing to take what they give you. You don't be chasing big plays against the Jets. Don't be chasing those big plays against the Jets. Take what they give you, lull them to sleep, and then set up your explosives. Stay patient on offense and use the slot. You have Dalton Kincaid. You have Trent Sherfield. You have Deontay Hardy. You have Stephon Diggs, who you can motion into the slot and play Trent Sherfield on the outside. Use that slot against the Jets. Critical in this matchup. So stay patient. Use the slot. Number three, do not be afraid to mix in the run game. The Jets D, for as good as they were last year, very average against the run. Very average. Don't be afraid to run it. You got James Cook. You got Latavius Murray. You got Damian Harris. Feed those guys a little bit. I know you want Josh Allen to go out and throw the ball and produce plays and all that stuff. This might be a game where you lean into the rushing offense a little bit more. Number four, Quinnen Williams. Enough said. One of the premier defensive linemen in the NFL, going up against Connor McGovern, who has some type of injury that he's still kind of working through, and Osiris Torrance, his first NFL start. So a guy's first ever game with the Bills, and Connor McGovern, who's not fully healthy, and Osiris Torrance, a rookie. You better have a plan to deal with that guy. And then number five is take care of the football. Take care of the football. This isn't the game where you want to give the Jets extra possessions. Points. We'll see how many points are scored in this game, but you just don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. If you remember that one game against the Jets, just two really goofy interceptions thrown by Josh Allen. Can't have it. Can't have it. You got to take care of the football. I think if either team turns the ball over twice, it's going to be trouble. You want to have one or fewer turnovers in this game, preferably zero. Real quick on special teams, or kicker is a good one. Well, he's average. Greg Zuerlein, 35 years old, has been a low 80% kicker the last 3 seasons. He's going to make the short ones. If you can get him to some of those longer attempts, I think that's where he's going to struggle as an aging kicker. But low 80% is where he's been in terms of field goals made over the last 3 years. Their punter, Thomas Morstead, he's a stud. He's an older punter, but he's excellent. He was with the Dolphins last year. If you remember some of those games, he really gave them some really good field position with his ability to punt. So an outstanding veteran punter there in Thomas Morstead. Their kick returner and punt returner scheduled to be Mecole Hardman. He's fast, but he is not immune to mistakes. If you remember last year against the Bills, or against Kansas City, when the Bills played them, he had a muff, and I think he's got a fairly high muff rate for his career. So he's got some explosiveness, but he's also got some ball handling issues and even some decision-making issues. So a high variance returner in Mecole Hardman. So there you have it. That's the Jets. That's the team. Those are my keys for the game. And hopefully you enjoyed this primer and you feel ready to go when it comes to this Monday night matchup, Bills versus Jets. Now, we're not done talking about this game. Our next podcast, I'll drop over the weekend, probably on Sunday night, maybe. I'm not exactly sure. But it will be in your podcast feeds for you before Monday, so you can listen to it at your convenience, whether it's Sunday or Monday, as you get ready for Monday Night Football. But you'll get my final thoughts, and I have something that I'm excited to talk about there. I've already kind of built out that segment. We'll get into injuries. Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills is going to be here to talk about the Bills' health and any injuries going into the game. And then, of course, my 5 predictions for the game. I always give a handful of predictions based on the way I think things are going to go. And then, of course, the outcome of the game. So all of that's still coming your way here on Locked On Bills. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.